All right, you're welcome back. You're still watching AM Chat on MITV, and this is the interview segment. And of course, I'm sitting here with my colleague, Unoma Obiasolo. She's always telling me I don't know how to pronounce the name. But you take the first lead on the question.
You're welcome to the discussion segment, and we are joined by Uju Ogubunka. He is the President, Bank Customers Association of Nigeria. You're welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you very much.
And of course, we still have Dr. Pat Amidi, a political analyst. We still have him in the studio. The Ministry of Finance has said they're going to, prosecute those found guilty of this paying the salaries to 3,000 ghost workers. And the Senate has seemed to support this prosecution. What is your position on this?
This is a serious case.
Okay.
They call them ghost workers or whatever, but I call them masquerade workers. By the time you remove the masquerade, you see the person behind it. And it is that person behind it as the engineer. And so you can really deal with such a person. It's a criminal offense. It's fraud. And fraud is criminal. So I personally don't even believe that they should tell us that they want to prosecute. That's what they should do. That's what they should do.
You are in support of
I am clearly in support of it because it's messing up the system, it's creating distortions in the system. And so wherever there is criminality, you don't have an option. If you can catch the criminal, you just have to prosecute him so that the law can take its course.
Doctor, as the president of the Bank Customer Association of Nigeria, with this development, we're aware that some banks were also indicted. What do you think? Because as a major stakeholder, what's the position of your association?
Well, what we learned is that there is an investigation going on.
Okay.
We've not been told in clear terms that some banks were indicted. But clearly you can imagine there could be a collusion between the ministry and, of course, the bankers. Otherwise, how could you start thinking about names coming into the system and all that? Some people must be behind it. And so what happens to A, naturally, will happen to B, because if you aid or abet, you're also within the same track. So if bankers were involved, it's reasonable to agree that they too should be prosecuted so that the law could take 100% course. You don't just treat one side and leave the other side, otherwise the problem will still continue. Yeah.
Now, Doc, BVN, we thought that the bank verification numbers were basically to help us, of course, for the customers to identify, have data, and just to make banking services easier. We never knew we could discover that through the BVN ghost workers. How did you receive it?
Well, it wasn't strange news to me, because the history of ghost worker started not just today. It's dated back to several years ago. I read analysis by one to Nigeria in a publication 2011, and it kind of chronicled the enormity of the problem of ghost worker. For example, we said in 2000 we have about 5,000 ghost workers in the military beyond the pension. 2001 also we said we have 40,000 civil service workers. And according to him, the declaration of the paper were unveiled by the Chief Accountant General. In 2013, he made mention of about 24,000 ghost workers in the Ministry of Defense, the pension department or unit. 2014, he said about 20% of the staff of Ministry of Information and, of course, National Orientation are also ghost workers. And we realized that the same year, 2014, that same year around October, about 60,000 federal civil service staff and ghost workers. So the news about the fact that 23,000 ghost workers have been identified today is not strange.
What makes it strange is because of the BVN.
Yeah, what the BVN actually has done is just to be able to track, the culprit to the very source. On the other hand, we have had such information coming, but we never have been able to track it to the very source. So BVN help us. For example, one of the accurate analysis is that a particular person, BVN was able to track a particular person as registering 20 ghost workers. In the past, we would not have been able to get it. So that is the benefit of BVN. And that is why I said in the paper review earlier that we are gradually getting to a regime. We are getting to a regime where Nigeria will have hope. What we are witnessing today, BVN and all that, there are things that happen elsewhere in the developed nations of the world, in America, in Canada, in the UK, and elsewhere. So we are gradually maturing and getting there. With time, it will be a thing of the past.
Do you think if Nigeria, federal government has had data, or maybe the registration identity card the other time has really been done properly, do you think we would have discovered this atrocity before now? Because only God knows how long it has been on.
Yeah, just like Doc has said, it's been on for a very long time. Manipulation of figures has always been there. And when you don't have tracking, monitoring, it becomes a major and huge issue. Now, what has happened, and I think we should be very grateful to the Central Bank and to the Bankers Committee that initiated the BVN despite the National Identity Card issue. That has been a problem. If we had a situation where every Nigerian had just one identity, such things would be difficult to happen because the moment you try it, it will show up. Technology has helped us so much. And you see, what happens here is that we, like Doc said, we are progressively moving forward. The only challenge we have is that despite the fact that we cannot reinvent the wheel, we are not as fast as we ought to be. We should have passed this level with all the money accruing to Nigeria, which we all know what has happened in the past. But we pray that going forward, money earned by this nation should be deployed to the kind of things we really need to make the environment much better and easier for all of us.
Because the Minister of Finance has also said that all the federally paid civil servants must be registered in this IPs before June. Do you think that is timely?
Yeah, it's very timely, and honestly, like I said, some of these things they tell us now shows weakness in the system. Shows lack of leadership. This has been on for a very long time. Why has it not been concluded before this time? Perhaps if it had been concluded before this time, these issues would have been nipped earlier than now.
And save Nigeria
so much money. For instance, if you take an average of 18,000 minimum wage and multiply by 23,000, that gives you approximately 400-something thousand naira in a month, or rather a million in a month.
Wow.
Now, if you take it for 1 year, that gives you close to 5 billion. And then think of how many more years such thing has been going on there could still go. And perhaps it's not only these 23 that have been discovered, there could be more. We're only hearing of 23 now. And that is what the Ministry of Finance alone
just disclosed.
What about other sectors?
We've not talked about other ministries, agencies, and perhaps.
I don't think, if you look at the population of ghost worker, it's cut across all the states.
That's right.
All the states. Kano over 5,000, Kaduna about 2,000, Oyo 3,000, and Niger 7,000, Abia or 558. So it's not just one. It's not concentrated in one region. It's a national issue. But I think one good news also here is that the Minister of Finance said for 5 years they were only able to register about 295,000.
That's right.
Of the people, seeing them physically and getting their data correct, and that happened within a period of 5 years. But in just 2 years, just 2 months, last 2 months, they've been able to validate about quite over 300,000. And she's saying that in the next 4 months, between now and June, everything should be over. So I think the speed is quite encouraging.
Okay, thank you very much. In case you just joined us, we're looking at the BVN exposure of over 23,000 ghost workers. And of course, looking at the implications for the economy and of course the federal government. Okay, so we'll be speaking with Dr. Uju Gubunka, who's the president of the Bank Customer Association of Nigeria, and of course a political and public analyst, Dr. Patrick Anidi. We might likely take some calls if time will permit us as we go ahead. Okay, Dr. Uju Gubunka, if you look at this kind of situation, judging from your background as a banker, the former registrar of the Chartered of Bankers of Nigeria, and of course you've attended, you're a major stakeholder anyway, what would you be suggesting for the banks to do? Because in the course of this investigation, the banks are likely going to be indicted.
Even bank officials, some bank officials.
Definitely. So, you preach ethics, you preach professionalism. This is not really too good. What do you think, sir?
Well, like I told you before, the government has not come out clearly to say banks or bankers have been indicted in one form or the other. Okay. What has happened is that the BVN has helped to fish these things out. Now, and they say that the investigation is going on. At the time they conclude the investigations, we will know perhaps which banks, who are the people inside that helped such malfeasance to take
in events of where banks are indicted, what do you think will
Now,
happen?
if banks are indicted, clearly we have a code of ethics and professionalism in the banking industry that all banks and bankers are subjected to. Now, such situations should be reported to the body that handles such cases. For instance, the Chartered Institute of Bankers as the custodian. Now, apart from being handled by government in terms of maybe prosecution and all that, if you are found culpable, your name can be listed as an individual. And then if it's an institution, you can be cautioned. And CBN can take it further from there because it's CBN that licensed the banks anyway. So there are multiple things that could be done, but I think the first thing to do, conclude the investigations, find out those who are involved, and then take it to the next level. But I believe that the Institute of Bankers, the Chartered Institute of Bankers, which I worked for several years, is quite in a position to sanction those who may be found culpable in accordance with the law. And you know that when the institute sanctions, you can only go to appeal to the Federal High Court or to Court of Appeal. So it has the powers to sanction up to the level of the High Court.
They said the investigation should be within 30 days. Let me ask you that. Within 30 days to, in case maybe innocent people were involved. Do you think 30 days is enough time for this investigation?
If the machineries are in order, why not? 30 days is good enough. Given what we are getting right now about the impact of BVN, we learned that you don't need to go through all the whole hog. All you need to do is get an account number and get the BVN number. You synchronize this and you get the details. I'm only concerned whether really it is possible for an individual banker to connive with government officials. I'm looking at it from the angle of my experience as an entrepreneur. I manage a system and we want to open an account, staff account with the bank. All the admin officer or the accountant does is to come up with a list of the staff and their account number or details, okay, and forward to the bank. And each month you see the company, detailing the accountant to pay certain amount to the account of the staff. Okay. So if that happens, it's a little bit difficult to assume that a typical bank director or manager will connive with.
Okay, we have a caller. Hello, good morning. Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, what's your name and where are you calling from, please?
Sorry?
Go ahead. Let's know your name and where you're calling from.
Hello, good morning.
Morning. Go ahead.
Morning.
Morning.
Morning, go ahead.
My name is Palacha.
Okay. All right. We can hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah, what know the strategy? Hello, what know the strategy the bank is to check fraud following the introduction of BVN? Yeah, I want to know the strategy the bank is to check fraud following the introduction of BVN.
Okay. Thank you very much.
The strategies.
Yeah.
Well, the BVN is merely an identity, right? Now, and it has your biometrics. It has been proven worldwide that with biometrics you cannot counterfeit another person. So that is enough to checkmate fraud. If those who are handling these things will be diligent enough and trained, because it's not enough to just take your biometrics. Somebody must be there to also read the biometrics when there is need for it. Okay. So if you've been trained properly and you are diligent on the job, if you bring your biometrics that is not the same with the one you had registered with, then certainly they are going to be different. And such a situation cannot be honored by a bank. Okay. So that is enough strategy on its own. And in fact, that's particularly why the biometrics and the BVN. Your BVN is different from mine. Your biometrics is different from mine. So even if you take my check number and fake it, it's not going to work. So I think that's enough strategy. Okay. But beyond that, like I said, there must be adequate training. There must be monitoring and supervision.
Okay. Do you think we have enough of that training?
Yes, I do.
Adequate personnel?
I believe so, yes.
Doctor, what's your reaction? Okay, we have a caller. Good morning. Hello, good morning. Hello? Okay, we lost the call. We just want to get to work.
I'm in tandem with I think I don't have any other possible option outside Praveen.
Okay. Well, this is quite interesting because when the banks were putting pressure on Nigerians to go and get this thing done,
it was as if it
or this another one it had. But Doctor, why have we waited this long? A lot of people expected that by now this is what will happen.
Well, this was is an optional strategy for banks.
Because Joy Sanusi, he said he stopped all these long numbers and brought it to 10. What's the digital number?
Right,
it was called, there was something that was called. Okay, we have a caller. Good morning. Hello.
Good morning.
Go ahead, please. Okay, go ahead. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. Well, he's talking about possibly using the BVN, right? We're talking about PVC. That using the BVN could possibly also eradicate electoral fraud. Can we use the BVN?
No, the PVC.
You mentioned because we didn't really get him clear.
It will be very limited because you see, if you read what the banks are saying, we have just close to about 60-something depositors in the banks, 60-something million.
Okay.
Now, compare that with number of people who are supposed to vote in Nigeria. That would be a bit constricting.
But the BVN is restricted to people who use the banks.
That's right.
So should the federal government introduce a better data platform that could get all Nigerians involved? So to have that, I think that will reduce criminal because this BVN is just for those who have access to the bank.
Okay, we have a caller, Doctor. Hello, good morning. Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, go ahead quickly.
Yeah, this is
All right, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to contribute to this topic.
You can go ahead.
Yeah, I want to say the issue of you being handling the good water to the FCC is not doing right. The best thing is just to go ahead and market them, send them.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that is a way of. Doctor, we don't have much time. She just asked you a question. I want you to react to that.
Yeah, you see, the BVN is like, we have waited so long for the ID, national ID card. It's not coming up. And yet, we are having issues in our industry. What can we do to save ourselves? That prompted the BVN. And the banks, the way banks treat things in Nigeria, how I wish is the same way other sectors. They try to educate themselves, they try to do some research, they try to go out, find out what is happening. They send people all over the world, find what, and come back home and package it. You can see the speed at which the BVN thing was done. This was just done by bankers and supported just by bankers. Now, nationally, we can't even do the ID card has been there for years. You do one session, you cancel, you do another one, you cancel, and all that, because of perhaps interests. Some people deliberately do not want these things to work because they are profiting from the system. So imagine that all of us have national ID card. There wouldn't have been need for BVN, as it were, because you can be traced at any point in time.
But considering these recent regulations, do you think federal government should do something now about this collection of data for all Nigerians?
Oh, certainly. Ensure definitely should fast track it.
Of
Not
course,
just whether they should do something
about it.
They should fast track the ongoing national ID card, and if possible, find out from the banks what they did to get this going fast.
As a follow-up to that, I was just going to ask, Doctor, we have the national ID card, we have the PVC, the voters card, of course, we have NIMC. NIMC also came up with their own. We have now BVN. Why don't we have a focus and have a national data? Instead of all these.
I think we should have what I call a harmonized focus, harmonized data bank. National ID card, for example, should suffice for institutional IDs. And of course, having to understand and reading through the benefits and the speed at which BVN can help to isolate and reveal quite certain illicit behaviors that we have just been talking about. The national ID card should be something that the federal government should pay serious attention to, deploy enough resources, both in terms of funding and human capital, so that we have a uniform approach to managing identity of the personnel.
We are also aware of when there's so much fraud, even in the national ID.
That's exactly what I want to say. Yeah. Even the national ID among the staff strength, I find out that our data available shows that about 40% of the workforce are ghost workers. 4,000 out of 10,000 workforce. So it's a lot.
So it's fraud in itself. You cannot achieve really anything from that.
Well, with this kind of situation, the BVN, of just like what the last caller said, how can it really check fraud? Doc, tell us, you are the president of Bank Customer Association of Nigeria. What would you be trying to do concerning educating customers? Because there might be more revelations, not just ghost workers. What are the likely development that is likely going to occur?
You see, our job is to enlighten our members.
Okay.
And in doing so, we try to create a platform that enables all of us to do our banking transactions successfully without any problems.
Okay.
Now, experience has shown that so many people don't understand even the basic things about banking and finance, and that's the truth. It is not about you having a PhD or having rocket science qualifications. No. Banking, finance is a specialist area. And you have to learn it. It's not just go to bank, withdraw money or deposit money. There are so many things involved. And that's why the association is trying to educate and enlighten people. The 2 programs we did last were very enlightened on the way people understand basic things.
Did you tell them about the BVN?
We did tell them. In fact, before the BVN started, we had started propagating it. We even told CBN that we wanted to be partner to them to let people get to know about it. But on our own, we initiated the ways and manners. We tried to let members know and get them to also register because we saw the importance of it. And that's why the success rate was very high. Although so many people may still not have gotten their BVN, even though we suspect that because of multiple account holding.
We saw postponement of the date.
Right.
Some people couldn't do their
Just use
transactions
Yes.
and all that.
Because it was necessary. You know,
I think they had to close people's accounts to
That's right.
force them to.
no, they didn't close anybody's accounts.
But you have access to the account.
If you come to the bank and you want to do some transactions, they ask you to, first of all, do your BVN.
And that's what I'm saying. You won't have access to your
That's right.
account
Yes.
until you.
That's right.
That's a major way to change.
That was a way to make sure that everybody gets involved in the BVN exercise. Because the importance to us, we can see it right now. If I have 20 accounts all over Nigeria, just put my BVN, all the accounts will show up. So if I want to know your account balance, for instance, it will not be difficult for me to know. The only thing is that because of confidentiality in the banks, I, as an outsider, will not know. But if you're an insider and I know your BVN, I just put your BVN and I'll get to know how much money you have, where you have your accounts.
Doctor, thank you
That's
very
life
much.
easier.
Thank you. On a final note, what the federal government is, of course, would I say Nigerians, the economy is a victim of these ghost workers. So how do you suggest the federal government work with the banks, you understand, to check for the fraud?
For that fraud.
I think we can take a leap from the benefits and the foundation already laid, the structure of BVN. And so whatever the federal government want to do, they should borrow lead. The template should be the same, you know. And Nigerians also should learn to be proactive or to be reactive to policy decisions. Sometimes we commonize, we don't take, policy issue very seriously. Look at the BVN issue, because when people find it difficult to have access to their accounts, that they began to cry. And they are saying the banking industry aren't really helping us. So I think Nigerians should change their mentality and attitude or culture towards managing information and reacting to policy issues. On a final note, I think what is happening now is good for Nigeria. Warren Reverend Kasali said corruption did more harm to Nigeria than insurgency. And I think we are seeing it all.
Okay, thank you very much.
What do you think they should be doing to these people who are guilty of these ghost workers? What should the federal government be doing to them? Should they just return the money and go?
No, it will end there. Otherwise, people will take advantage of that. They should be prosecuted.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay, that's the much we can take on this segment. We are really glad to have you speak with us, and we're really glad to have you. We'll go on a short break now. When we return, the program continues. Please stay tuned.